Hello and welcome to episode 58 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. As always, joining me is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. Before we go anywhere else, let's have a little chat about Element Games. Providing you with hopefully loads of cool Christmas goodies and general plastic hobby goodness.
Yeah, all these could need for the hobby.
Especially with these start collecting bundles that come out, and then you get an extra 20% off or whatever.
You hear about all the store managers screaming about how good value they are, but then you get an extra 20% off that, and it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as always, if you're going to use Element and you want to support the show, head to theimperialtruth.com, click on the banner, and make your purchases from there, and the show gets a little bit of recognition for that, which is amazing. And also we have Miles at Lil Legend Studios.
Yeah, so Miles is the man you want to go to if you need anything painted for your army, for your legion, and if you want any painting advice or tips, and he's got tutorials and one-to-one sessions. The man is the god with the airbrush.
Yeah, with everything. I actually saw he sent me some photos of his own Blood Angels he was doing.
I know, I'm a bit surprised he was doing his own stuff.
It's Christmas. It's like having a little break for Christmas. But with some tales that are going around about, some other services, we're actually going to get Miles on in the future. We're going to revisit our commission painting section because there's probably some bits we missed off and maybe bits need updating. So we're going to look at that again. A slightly different viewpoint, I think, going forwards. Might only be a short section, but I think it could be quite useful.
Sometimes it's good to go back over these things and refresh them, I think.
Yeah, very much. We were looking at stuff. Miles, he mentioned to me that he's quite surprised how often people don't know the process. The questions to ask, what they're looking for. A lot of the time they're too trusting in him. Things like that. So, which is fine for someone who's honest in stand-up, and not even just honest, but miscommunication can cause issues. So, there are people out there in the past who've taken stuff and run away with it, or have just done a job to the letter of what was asked rather than the spirit. So there are ways of avoiding that happening, and there are ways of people just misunderstanding exactly what you want, things like that. So we shall cover that at some point, I'm sure. What have you been working on? Managing to get stuff done over the break?
Well, I didn't get much done over the break, I must admit. I was lucky enough to move back home on sort of a couple of days before Christmas.
That's not because the wife chucked you out. That's because you were having work done, yeah? Yeah,
so the extension was finally finished, and I managed to get back into my painting room, which I have now, which you probably can tell is a little bit echoey from our usual recording. So hopefully, once I've got some stuff up on the walls and got some more furniture in here, that'll make the recording a little bit easier. Yeah, but that means I haven't actually. I was planning on doing loads of painting over Christmas, but Christmas can be a bit full on. I didn't get round to doing much at all, but I'm doing a bit now and hoping that tonight and like New Year and all those sort of things, I'll be able to crack on and get plenty done.
Yeah, in previous years, I've watched 60 odd hours of Lord of the Rings content and done bits and pieces, but this year I was like, awesome, I'm going to get the airbrush out, I'm going to start working on, I'm out that day, out half that day, out that day, it's almost gone.
It's amazing how quick it goes.
Yeah, it can do, and this one feels a bit shorter as well, the way the holidays have worked, but I think that's just the way they've kind of fallen. So I've not done anywhere near as much as I'd hoped, but I've got other stuff done, so I can't grumble too much.
Good.
On that front. And seeing as we've got such a short intro, we'll throw the news straight onto that. So just trying to have a quick reminder with, the time of year it is, everything gets muddled up. We don't think we talked about the night, Acastus Night Porphyrion last time.
I don't remember talking about it.
No. Well, either way, I mean, it's available. People have started putting theirs together. We've seen photos of it alongside Warhounds, where it's pretty much the same height as a Warhound.
It's a massive kit, isn't it?
It's a beautiful kit. Some people don't like it. You know, as we say, everyone's not going to like everything. I think it's fantastic. I am definitely picking mine up at the open day, which, you know, a couple of days away from recording. But got a mate.
With the chunky construction of it, it looks very much like a Titan anyway, doesn't it? Really, it sort of looks less like a Knight to me, more like a Titan.
Yes and no. It still feels very much like a Knight to me, just grown up. But I can understand that. I'm hoping actually it makes it a little bit easier than the way it's built. It looks easier to put together than some of the Titans.
Yeah, wasn't it the Warhound is like one of the worst Titans to put together with all the little hydraulics and stuff?
Thankfully, I've got a mate who's going to do it for not a lot of money for me. Save me the effort. It'll be done a lot quicker as well. So that'll be cool. And add that into the Knights that are sitting there yelling at me, waiting to be painted. £320?
320 quid's a fair chunk of money, but I suppose it's a fair chunk of resin.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad, actually. So double the price of a normal Knight?
I don't know about you, but these things are usually costed on like how much resin they take up, aren't they? Like a sort of a volume price.
At the end of the day, like the moulds are going to cost so much. They're relatively cheap, I think, as far as I'm aware. And the resin is basically done on weight when it gets to certain sized pieces. There might be a little bit more of an expense with some other little bits, depending on... I mean, you would think that they're not going to sell as many of these as they are, say, Knight Lancers.
Yeah, it's true.
So you kind of don't mind paying... You wouldn't even mind paying a little bit more because you understand that it's not a high demand item. I think $320 for the size of what you're getting is not a bad price. It's expensive again, but I don't kind of feel that it's out of order. How much is a Warhound?
I'm going to just hazard a guess. I haven't checked this, but I think isn't it near 400 quid?
Yeah, I was going to say over that actually, just off the top of my head. And you know, as I say, maybe it's not quite as bulky, you know, kind of spread out, I suppose. A Mars Pattern Titan body only is £280, and you're looking at £42 for each arm, so that's £360. Oh, so it's not that bad actually. I thought it was a slightly more than that. So yeah,
bad.
So it's and I suppose actually the Knight is more the Warhound's very top heavy, very shoulder heavy. And the Knight's a bit bulkier going up. So, yeah, it's probably, you know, not far off the amount of resonance in a Warhound. It feels all right to me.
Yeah, I mean, I always, the price is what the price is, I think, often with these things. And if you want it badly enough, you'll buy it. I think that's...
It's, exactly. It's something that you don't need to play the game. It's very much that cool toy that you add into the game. And the rules seem to be pretty cool. The points gone up a bit from the original we saw, which is very sensible.
The original we saw, I think, were ridiculous, though, weren't they? They were a bit sort of...
It was like 350 points or something. It was less than that. It was mental. It was so cheap. About 350, I think. And I was like, and this is just under 500. People saying just get a Warhound for D weapons, but. It's a little less fun, isn't it? Plus this, if you've got it, because it can only be the Lord of War for Knights or Mechanicum, Tagmata. But if it's in the Knights list, you can give it the Knight rules, the upgrades.
Oh, that does make it more...
So yeah, you can have a
versatile.
A 3-up shield on it. Because it was quite interesting. Some people were saying, it won't survive as long as a Warhound does. And it's like, well, it depends how well you can roll 3-ups. Because actually, if you position it right and you just keep rolling 3-ups, then it's better than having 2 void shields. So,
because the 2 void shields, I mean, you can take them down tactically, can't you? Right, I'll fire a couple of weak weapons just to drop those shields, and then everything else goes at the armour. Yeah, a couple of Hunter Killer Missiles, take them down. Whereas, 3-up, you're going to start firing your big weapons at it straight away.
And if you keep rolling threes quite well, I think a few people might do that. But it's very much a gun platform. I will have to look at the weapon loadout, as in it's got autocannons that can be IRAD cleansers or las cannons. So, and then the top can be either an anti-aircraft rocket or a template rocket, which in a night army you might think, depends what you're doing, because you can use the smaller 40k knights for anti-aircraft as well. So, who knows? I'll have to sit down with a book and actually start writing a knight list with what I've got.
That's always the problem with these nice kits, isn't it? It's deciding which one, unless you're really good with the magnets.
Yeah,
it's then deciding which weapons you want to put on and the loadout before you even play a game of it.
Yeah, and to be honest, they are getting better in supplying those magnet holes already in the larger sections.
And if you need magnets, where would you go to, Greg?
Maybe Element Games. Yeah, certainly. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot you can do in that in saving money and making your own alternatives and what have you. But yeah, I love it. I'm gonna have to try and work out a logo for a Night Household as well at some point. But in terms of that, we also had the Medicae. The Primus Medicae was released in stores.
Yes, yeah. Did you buy one?
I did. A couple of the guys at the club bought them. Quite mixed responses on this guy.
I really liked him.
I'm not 100% sure it fits my aesthetic for what I want for the Space Wolves, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to be a problem, isn't it? That a certain pose or a certain look is not going to suit everyone's army.
No.
But then again, though, is that so much a problem just because it doesn't fit your one, or is it
absolutely
problem
not?
That,
I'm not. I don't think it's the greatest model ever made. I'm not going to sing it from the rooftops, but I think it's a very good model. At the end of the day, with these limited edition releases, it was a case of I'll buy it, and if I really don't want it, I'll sell it on. Because
exactly, yeah.
So and to be honest, on the heresy trading on Facebook, even normal models are going for about what they're worth. Just because that 12% postage from Forge World.
Yeah, that 12% postage is a killer, isn't it?
Yeah, so people are selling, maybe they're selling a Thanatar 78 quid, I think it is. They'll probably sell it 78 quid posted, so they may be losing 5 quid on it. I've seen that happen a number of times. You can still pick up some deals on there as well, but not always is it the big deals. But
yeah.
It's all fun. We've got Michael on again. We're talking the Advent, Black Library Advent calendar. All the stories you can still pick up from there. They're also doing a 12 Days of Christmas. So, a lot of these books are 40k or Age of Sigmar or even Warhammer. But they have done, on day 6, they've done, I think, 6 half-price novels to start you off on a series, which are pretty good. So for $4.99 you can pick up the first book in the Beast Arises, or I think the Soul Hunters, First of the Soul Hunters. There's a few like that. So that's I thought that might be interesting for people to have a look at. And I can't remember which day it is. I think it might be day 3. 5 for 3 on art prints. So these are like there's 5 of them. Let me just get them up and have a double check as I'm going through, so I don't want to get it completely wrong, as I usually would. Here we go. So it is day 4, gallery prints. So the Horus Heresy, they got volume 1, 3 and 4. So volume 1 is, I believe, the first 5 books.
Oh, wow.
It says waiting for it to load up. £82.50, which is, not unreasonable for art. And yeah, the first 5 books has art prints, which is quite cool. Yeah, I think that's actually quite a good little deal. I wonder if you can still get the calendar, because let me have a look. The 2017 Black Library calendar, you can. So there are fewer than 100 Heresy copies and fewer than 200 of the Black Library calendar. Now, Carl Tuttle's little trick on getting cheaper artwork is to buy the calendar and then cut it up because the back of each picture is the calendar for the next month. So
yes.
it's not a print per se, but you've got a very good image, 12 images for however much it is, which is $14.99.
Not bad.
There's some cool stuff. So Master of Mankind, the Garrow front cover, Binary Succession, Corax, and there's some cool stuff. You could just get cheap frames, make them look quite good, put them up, which is quite a cool little idea.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's a nice little idea. I might use mine as a calendar. I might cut it up. I haven't decided yet.
Do both, sort of, really, can't you?
Yeah.
Just going to draw all over the artwork.
Yeah, well, as each month finishes, you could just cut that one off. Not a bad idea.
It's not a bad way. Also, a calendar, the limited lifespan. It's nice to get a bit more use out of it after you've used it as a calendar as well. So
yeah, definitely, absolutely. There was some cool, and that was pretty much that's pretty much what's come out. Obviously, we got another 6 days of the 12 Days of Christmas to come from Black Library. We're coming up to the open day on the 2nd. Obviously, we're recording this before. We're not really going to go too much into that. We've got a jigsaw puzzle, which Forge World weren't going to do, and have responded to people asking for them to do it, which is a mishmash of models as far as we can tell, which is quite cool. And I think most of them are things we're going to have known about anyway. But we'll deal with all that next episode, I think, because it's pretty much going to be out there when you're listening to this. So it'll be pointless to go through that. What we have had that is big news for the Heresy is Laurie Golding's last Horus Heresy meeting. So he posted up a picture of him saying he was having it with Nick Kime and someone else with the the Fantasy Flight board game board, which is the...
Yes, I saw that in the picture, yeah.
The Palace of Terror, with the cards from that game as well, which are all themed around the Chaos forces attacking the palace, and also some really old text as well. And Laurie's now officially left the company, so he's off to the west coast of America pursuing what I understand is a really good opportunity for him. I'm sure we'll find out more about that if you follow him on Twitter and what have you. But it looks like they've laid the groundwork for the actual Assault on Terra now, which is quite cool. Which means that it hasn't been written yet, in theory.
Yeah, it hasn't been written, but it's nice that obviously they're really thinking about how it's all going to pan out. And I mean, we know some of the key elements, but
oh yeah, we know very little.
A lot more that goes into it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, not just that. You've got the fact they've got to get to Terra as well, and all the fights that go on. They're very aware. People have kind of pointed out various things about. The original text doesn't really mention much about the battle for air superiority, which is kind of a key thing, and so there's lots of stuff to be drawn together. And this doesn't necessarily mean it's just for Black Library. This could be for Forge World as well, because I don't think people know, but Laurie's been working with Forge World for a long time as well, kind of checking off, they come to him and say, does this fit? He kind of reviews what they're doing as well, because that's been his job. So moving forwards, someone else is going to take up that role, because it looks like once we get to the end of, and we talk about this with Michael, once we get to the end of the numbered Heresy series, there's going to be a lot of scope for Horus Heresy, the setting, which is really cool. Really cool.
Yes, it's quite interesting as well that Alan Bligh recently, obviously, he retired, and now Laurie Golding's gone as well. So it's quite a lot of talent and knowledge that's left the company.
Knowledge. I think there are lots of talented people out there. Thing with Alan Bligh has obviously been there for a long, long time with this knowledge.
Not Alan Bligh, sorry, Alan Merritt.
Oh, sorry, Alan Merritt. Yeah, you've got me saying it. Alan Merritt has been there, and he's got his fans and his less than fans for various reasons. But whether you like him or hate him, he's been there for a long time, overlooking a lot of this. Laurie has been well entrenched in this for a long time, knows his stuff inside and out, and for years now has been keeping an eye on it and trying to keep everything in the right context and stuff. So, yeah, whoever comes in has big shoes to step in that. And I'm sure, well, Nick Kime, I think he said, was in this meeting, so maybe Nick Kime's taking on part of that. Laurie was commissioning editor for Black Library, particularly for the Heresy, I think. So maybe Nick's stepping into that, and Nick knows his stuff as well. And we regularly hear things like, when they're at these meetings, Gav Thorpe knows so much about the whole setting. And I'm sure they've got other people as well. They're not going to just throw this away. And just because Laurie's left doesn't mean people can't phone him up and ask a question. Why waste a resource when, you send an email to him, I'm pretty sure he'll answer an email. It's not like he's left, under acrimonious circumstances. It's just a change for him. So that's cool. And the last thing is, did you get to watch any Warhammer Live?
I watched a little bit of the first week when it was free to watch it at other times, but my schedule doesn't really allow me to watch it live, per se. And I didn't take out a subscription for this. I think if they definitely start putting Heresy content on there, I'd consider it.
Right.
But at the moment, I thought, no, I'll just wait to see what comes of it.
So they did a week. They actually shut down after a week to go away and review what's happening. So they haven't done anything yet until January, which I think maybe they should have communicated a little bit better. Doesn't bother me. I've subscribed up to it. Firstly, when I said that you could subscribe via Amazon Prime, Amazon own Twitch, so the people utilising the Twitch service do get paid that £5 or $4.99 or whatever. So if you've got an Amazon Prime account, you can sign up for free, and Games Workshop receive the money.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's another good one for you. So you can do that. I can watch it at work to an extent. I need to get the chat available at work. Work computers are slightly. I can't play around with them at work basically because they're quite sensitive. So I can't be on the chat, which is really annoying because I can't. There are times when I'm like, I want to talk to Rob already. I want to mention something and I can't do it. Or I know that my mates are on there. But so far, a few glitches, a few hitches. The game reports were good. They're working. They've already come up with ideas to make them better, to connect the commentators with the games a little bit more. The interviews on the Thursday were the big thing for me. They were really good. Getting into a lot of detail, offering up information that we wouldn't have got years ago. That's obvious. We've been saying this for a long time now, but getting to talk to people behind the scenes a little bit as well. In fact, it was happening during the 40k game as well. So on the second, on the Friday, the second game was Magnus versus Space Wolves, and Simon Grant, who was one of the guys who did the rules on Prospero, also did the rules for the Space Wolves Codex, or was on the team for them, and for some of the new Thousand Suns stuff. And he came by because he knew this was going on, and they got him on to talk about the game and the rules and everything, just as Magnus got taken down in like the most, I think it was like a 1 in 8,000 chance of happening, or maybe more than that, sequence of dice rolls, which is quite cool because the guys playing the game actually said, do you want us to re-roll that? Because, Magnus died really early on and the game's probably going to be finished. It's like, no, they're not going to fix stuff. The games aren't going to be kind of manufactured to make them good. They will keep playing on till the end of the game, but they won't stage stuff, which is cool. But there were a lot of people on the chat asking for Heresy content, which is cool. There were murmurings of, at some point we will do it. My personal opinion on that is the Friday before the Weekender, they should have Heresy games on there. That would be a really cool time to introduce that.
I think that would be a great suggestion. That's a great idea, Greg.
Yeah, so the thing is, if you want Heresy on there, you need to tell them. Tell the community team, whether it's in the chat, send them emails is better. And as I say, they've gone back, they've received various bits of information about what was good, what was bad, what works, what doesn't. And they're going to review that. Duncan was brilliant on there, chatting away, as usual, you expect. And then they went a step further when the Fall of Cadia stuff was being leaked. They just put up that they were going to be on Twitch the next day, talking about it. So they did. And they were on Twitch, and they had the book there, and they showed off proper photos of the models, and that we'd seen already. They gave away a few of the rules, a little bit of the story, showed us some pages from the book, and just got ahead of that rumour. All these fuzzy images came out, and then boom, here's some proper images, and oh yeah, we'll show you some more stuff as well.
It's a great tactic to sort of quell the rumour mills, isn't it? And stop their websites from just gaining all the traffic.
Yeah, absolutely, and it kind of frustrates me that I still see people guiding people towards Bella Lost Souls or whoever, and I'm like, it's like available from the company that do it. Why don't you go there? And I don't know if it was. I don't know exactly why, but the following day they just decided to do some Age of Sigmar stuff as well. They were like, "Yeah, we're cool."
Just on a whim.
Yep, they were like, "Well, there weren't that many rumours out. There was some murmurings, but no real photos." They were like, "Oh, by the way, tomorrow, come along. We'll show you loads of Age of Sigmar stuff that's coming in the next year as well." And it looks like it's stuff. Was it all the Zangors, things like that? It's all coming out at some point in January. And there are some amazing models coming. There really are. It's top-notch stuff as usual. Fall of Cadia's kind of blowing that up. Did you see have we seen it? I saw a photo of White Dwarf. Haven't picked White Dwarf up yet. Basically, the photos from 40k were the Saint Celestine, the Sisters of Battle, so plastic Sisters of Battle. There's a huge Mechanicum Dominus who's been around for 10,000 years. And there's a plastic female Inquisitor. And apparently they're being sold as one box. And that box is like 65 quid for all 5 models.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which someone immediately kind of in our club said, "Oh, you have to buy all 5." And it was like, I turned round to Andy, and he's like, I said, "Andy, I'll take the Magus off you. I'll pay you 15 quid for that. No worries." It's like, you're going to have no problem passing on some of those models. And actually, when you break that down in price, that Magus is supposed to be kind of the size of a Carnifex, which someone said to me, "Oh, that's not that big anymore." I'm like, for a single Magus Dominus it is. Yeah, we're not talking about a huge battle automata here. We're talking about Magus Dominus, who I'm probably not going to use the 40k rules for. I want him for something in my army.
Yeah, and there'll be some cool crossover conversions and stuff being done with it, won't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other models are fantastic as well. Kind of seeing the return of the Inquisitors, things like that. There's a lot of cool stuff going on that I need to catch up and get on top of. But those images were great. I personally really enjoyed Warhammer Live. So, just to reiterate, you can use your Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you can, and you haven't used your Twitch subscription, you can subscribe through that for free. So, I was talking to my mate Dan, who doesn't have Amazon Prime. There's a number of things you can do with Amazon Prime. So, Twitch, £5 Twitch subscription for a year is £60, yeah? Amazon Prime's £79, I think.
Yes.
Right? So, if you do that and subscribe to GW for £6 a year, you're getting all of Amazon TV for £19. Not only that...
And Amazon Music.
Yeah, not only that, you get Amazon Music. You also get Amazon Books. You're allowed to... They have a library system. I think you're allowed to download a book for free every month, and they're restricted maybe on the books you're allowed to download, but there's quite a lot. And that's all on top of the fact that you get Prime delivery, next day delivery free, when on a lot of their stuff you're paying £2.50 or whatever for delivery anyway. So not only are you getting that free, you're getting that next day. You also get access to deals that you wouldn't if you're not a Prime customer. So I bought a Dremel for like a half price. I think it was 30 quid off because I was a Prime customer. So when you look at all of that you can get, if you want to utilise it, Amazon Prime for films, as I found out over Christmas, there's a lot that you have to pay a very small amount for. But there's still a lot of TV. As a geek, things like A Man in a High Castle, Lucifer, Preacher, as a comedy person, Parks and Rec, there's a lot of content on there as well. So when you add that all together, I think Amazon Prime's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I'd agree actually, because I've recently got Amazon Prime, because I've been doing. I had a trial for a while, but since we moved into our house and we didn't have our satellite dish installed, Amazon Prime was really handy, just sort of like watching odds and ends on telly. But yeah, if you can do that and then combine it with something like Warhammer Live, then that's a no-brainer, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people out there that have got Amazon Prime accounts that maybe aren't utilising them. And if they're thinking about doing this, I mean, you just saved yourself a load of money.
I never knew they provided a free Twitch service. Otherwise,
Neither did I until you told me.
I would have been using that a lot earlier on Critical Role, which is a D&D playthrough, and I've actually subscribed to that as well. So I've got two going on. I don't mind that. The beauty is with Warhammer Live as well, with Twitch, Warhammer Live is free to watch when it's live. So Wednesdays they play 2 games of Warhammer. One starts at about 3 o'clock, one starts about 7 o'clock. And they do the same on Friday with 40k. Thursday they have the interviews, and there might be other stuff they throw on. So covering events on the weekend. So when you're watching that live, that's still going to be free. So, yeah, it's not always easy to watch. But in the UK, after work on a Wednesday, you might be able to watch Age of Sigmar. After work on a Friday, you might be able to watch a bit of 40k. And then at the weekend, you can dip in. It's only after the event that you have to be subscribed to have access to the locked footage. So you can still watch live, because a lot of people were like, oh, you know, I don't want to pay £5 to watch anything, where you can still get bits of it without paying. But
yeah, if you really wanted to.
Yeah, you know, 60 odd hours of content a week for a £5. I didn't watch all of the events that were going on, but the tables they were using were brilliant. The first game on the Friday at 40k was Eddie Eccles from the community team, his Gene Stealers against God, I can't remember who it was now. Someone's Ultramarines on the table that they photographed for the Gene Stealers book. So it's a huge imperial building that they're actually playing on and through and around. And because that's a campaign that they're going to be running and carrying on. But they're open to suggestions, which is really cool. So as I say, I will keep bombarding them and saying, heresy. There were a number of people doing that in the thing. It would only be sensible at some point to put heresy on the stream. But yeah.
I think so. I think there's definitely a community there that they can tap into.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what they're all about.
And remember as well, you know, if you're still unsure, you can always just sign up for 1 month and cancel your subscription, £5, give it a proper go. In January when the nights are dark, you're not going to be going out late night. You're a geek, you're going to be inside painting. Just have it on. Awesome stuff. I think that's about all. So we'll leave that there. We'll come back, and the rest of the episode we're talking about Prospero, playing the game, and then Michael comes on to talk a little bit more about the Advent and stuff like that. Righty ho. So, having talked a few episodes ago about the miniatures and a little bit into Prospero the game, we're going to go into it a bit more, because this is more about playing the Heresy in different ways. But before we get into the game mechanics, there is a nice little background book that comes with the game, and there is a lot of there's the usual Horus Heresy spiel right at the front, and then the explanation, because of course people are buying this as a way into the Heresy, aren't they? So we got 2 or 3 pages of what is the Heresy and roughly what's going on, and then another couple of pages about Magnus the Red's folly and setting the background for why the wolves are on Prospero anyway. There are some nice bits. There's a little bit of background about the Space Wolves Legion that I haven't seen a huge amount of before, which is cool. What is quite interesting in this is it's very much, this is part of the Heresy. This is a Horus Heresy branded product. We have some interesting stories here. Lehman Russ was not raised into the culture of men as a child, but into that of a pack of Fenrisian wolves, which is quite cool. Got a Mowgli vibe going on. But
who's Baloo?
Exactly, I can be Baloo. But this is this fact? Is this the story they tell down the generations? Just because it's written in the book doesn't mean we don't know the perspective per se, but it's quite cool that it's given us a bit of that, and the first meeting with the Emperor, with the feast and the challenges they set each other, and all that. About the wolves taking on the role as the Emperor's executioners, and you can discuss that in all its forms as to how it was meant and whether it was meant and did they believe it too much and all that stuff. This does suggest, but then this may be from the Space Wolf side, this suggests that there was certainly a little bit more there. But then we get to the bloodied claws who went down onto Prospero, led by Gygor Fellhand, and how they fought and how he was put in charge of them because he used to be, he was one of the wildest, most aggressive guys who's learned, and so he was put in charge of this pack again, which was cool. So it's really nice actually just to see a little bit of that, again about their iconography, about the fact that they had one of the biggest fleets out of the legions. Their sky barges for the Sky Warriors and all that, which is pretty cool. They say nothing too in depth, and probably all tainted a little bit by wanting, each side's going to make themselves sound good. Because again, the Thousand Sons have got a little bit as well, which is all very much woe with the Thousand Sons, woe with the Thousand Sons. Where are they really? I mean, that's the other debate, isn't it? How much was their own fault? Because no matter what, they ignored the Edict of Nicaea, and it wasn't just that they were using psychic powers, it was that it was turning to sorcery, was part of the problem there. And then a little bit about Azek Araman and Gygor as well, who had fought alongside the Thousand Sons before against the Orcs of Drogoron. One good way of making someone hate another one, the Thousand Sons withdrew at a critical moment because they'd found some ancient artifacts and left the Space Wolves in a bit of a bind, and Gygor was the only one to get out. But
they pulled out early. Yeah,
they did pull out early. So there's a nice little bit in there, and then picking out an individual for each of the marks. So Space Wolf Tactical Legionary explaining Hothrabrad Steelmane, a Custodian Guard, Velden Thonitor, Sister Silence, and then one for each of the other types of armour as well.
It's quite nice because these are the sort of colour plates that we're looking forward to seeing in the next book, aren't they, really? So it's nice to have a look at them beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly giving an idea on just individual characters' pieces are nice as well, to give you an idea on maybe where they're going to go with Inferno, because this was obviously written with Inferno in mind. Inferno's been worked on such a long time. They're going to know what they want to put in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So that's the background book. It's quite slim. but it's just a nice little bit of extra fluff and extra information in there. And then we get the actual Burning of Prospero rules book, which is cool. Should we do the scenarios first, then talk about how the rules work?
Yeah, okay, let's go for that.
So the idea of this, again, much like Betrayed at Calth, for those who've played it, you've got 6 scenarios in here. They did add one in the White Dwarf, didn't they, that came out afterwards.
Yes.
And the idea
you mean for the Calth one, or are you talking about this one?
Did they have one for this one, or was it just for Calth? It might have just been for Calth, actually. I lose track.
I'm sure there will be another one if there isn't one.
It's very easy with what they got here to just add a scenario in every now and then. Or to make your own. Because as we'll go into the rules, it's fairly simple, the rule system, which allows tinkering with it to be even easier, really. But these are 6 scenarios. Ultimately, they're designed to tell a story, to be played from 1 through to 6 as a campaign, and to see if the Space Wolves can achieve all their objectives, or the Thousand Suns could repel them enough. And because we got Azek Ahriman, there's a bit more maybe than Betrayed at Calth, because, if you can get to Ahriman and kill him or whatever, then you can potentially stop the plan, so you feel maybe a bit more involved in the actual direct storyline.
Yeah, I suppose so, definitely.
But then you also have that, well, I've stopped Azek Ahriman. So what happens in the future? But yeah, it's all good. And we have scenario 1 is, just have a quick go through them. Scenario 1 is the Space Wolves have landed. So I probably should say
this one was very much trying to stop the Space Wolves from getting past and getting to the exit, wasn't it? It was very much sort of them steaming through and trying to stop them. Yeah,
so just to recap on Prospero, for those who don't know, the Thousand Suns, as it goes into in the background, but some believe that Magnus blinded the Thousand Suns to the coming of the Space Wolves because he wanted to accept his punishment. But whatever, the Space Wolves got to the planet fine, and bombarded the heck out of it, and Tiska City was the one that was under this big Kine shield, so it was intact, and the Space Wolves had to land and then go into the city on foot, as it were. And this is that shatter the perimeter, get through it. And there's a nice chunk of story about these Thousand Suns who are like, what's going on? What should we do? They're not even sure here whether they should fight, because Prospero happens before the heresy is known about, before Horus's turn is known. So the idea of firing back on your brother Space Marine here again is completely alien to the nature of what they really want to do. The Space Wolves have had time to build up and kind of get accustomed to that and what have you, but the Thousand Suns maybe haven't.
Yes,
Yeah, we do get to see some of the Thousand Suns, some of the psychic powers in this story, like the guy reknits his armor and everything else like that. But yeah, they don't know what Magnus is up to, and these Space Wolves are coming. And it's a very simple Space Wolves start on part of the board, and they must get off the board, and the Thousand Suns try and stop them. So very simple, kind of easing you into the rules as well with that one, which is pretty cool. Scenario 2, because they do 2 things with scenarios here. This time they're bringing in the custodians, and they've advanced into the city. They're basically counterattacked, and they kind of say to themselves, right, well, there's a statue of the Emperor here. We'll make our stand here until we can be helped out. And the Thousand Suns are coming at them from all angles. And yeah, this is a timed game just to give that impression of help's coming. This is also a mission that is very difficult to play without. I think the first time you play this mission, particularly as the Thousand Suns, will be very difficult. But as you come to understand the game more, because when we played it, Neil was the Thousand Suns on this one and struggled big time.
This was horrendous for me.
We found we were playing some of the rules wrong as well, which didn't help. I then played Dan at the club, and I was the Thousand Suns, and I still failed, even knowing roughly what I was supposed to do, because I was like, oh, actually, no, I should have done this, this, and this, and this. But it's quite cool. It shows the power of the custodians, in that these waves of Marines are coming at them, and they can, with a little bit of luck, really just hold off everything that comes at them. But that's quite cool. We get to see some custodians. The little story bit is like one of them tells another one off for getting too close to him in the fighting. He's like, no, I'll handle this bit. You stay in your area. Let's not clash weapons, which is quite cool. Third scenario, the Thousand Sons have realised actually one of the biggest problems they're facing is the Sisters of Silence. And they're nullifying their psychic powers, so they start to target them, and Araman's out on the field for this one. And they're trying to hunt them down with these Terminators. They're specifically going to find them. And again, in the little story, it's like, oh, that's quite cool, that's quite cool. And then all of a sudden this Titan appears as well and starts trying to help out and fire. So we get blast templates and all kinds of stuff. And in this one, you get to see Araman for the first time and what he can do, and he can go crazy, can't he?
He was nails.
Absolutely nails, yeah. Which is really...
That was actually when I felt as though it was turning for me, because I felt the first scenario was, again, quite weighted for Space Wolves, because all we got to do is get one model to the exit point and it's game over. And the second one with the Custodes was absolutely probably the hardest game I've played, because they were just so brutal. But this one, it did switch on its head, because suddenly when Araman came along, he was just so good at everything he did.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll get into the rules and how that works in a bit. The fourth mission is about pushing onto the Psychic Fortress. So the traitors are deployed. Also, the traitors, the Thousand Sons. Your viewpoint varies. Excuse me. They're behind this psychic kind wall. So this is pushing right into deeper into the city. And to break this wall, you need to have a Sister of Silence on that wall piece, nullifying its power. So she's like allowing all the Space Wolves to run through. So no one can shoot through this wall either. So it's a real kind of trying to force an opening and then make it count, whilst the Thousand Sons are then trying to block that opening off, which offers some cool story ideas and how to play the game. So from this point on, I haven't played them, but again, just showing you the story of that, and they're trying to get deeper into the city, which leads us on to 5, which is trying to get up into one of the pyramids, I think it is. It's a portal maze. So Araman at this point is locked in. If you've read the books, you know that Araman's various bits of this tie back. So in this one, Araman's locked in a psychic duel with Othir, weird make of the Space Wolves, and he can't really defend himself. He's too busy doing this. And the Space Wolves are trying to get him, but they're climbing up this maze of buildings, so you've got 4 separate tiles, and you've got to get through portals to get to them, and the Thousand Sons are at every step trying to stop you, and you've got to reach Araman's ritual circle and put the knife into him before he can do stuff. And Araman can, if he wins the duel quick enough, can then come in and fight as well, which is quite cool. And then the last one is the Will of the Primarchs. So this is the bit where Araman's come down from his tower. Gygor's kind of getting up close to sort him out. And we get the cracked floor tiles because the battle's in full flow here. Prospero itself is starting to crumble. And in the background as well, the Primarchs are dueling. So there's rules in this one for whoever's in doing better in the fight affects how the rules work on that turn. So if Russ gets the better in that turn, then you discard psychic powers from their deck and things like that. But if the other one, Magnus, yeah, then he's doing better. So yeah, it's quite cool in that respect that you've got this all in the background. That fight's still going on. It still roots you in very much into the story of what's going on in the whole of the fight.
Yes.
And this is the Space Wolves trying to get into the Great Library, because the Great Library really stands for what the Thousand Suns are. So the Space Wolves want to get in there and tear all the books down and destroy them. And of course, Ahriman's going to stand there, because Ahriman still thinks, he can save his legion from everything that's going on everywhere. So the library's where all that knowledge is kept, and he's not going to want to lose that anyway, which is quite cool. So they're all fairly themed. If you know the story, they're not tied directly into it, but there are aspects of it which reflect the main story, which is good, because it means, again, you can have your own story running alongside it, which I like.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they flowed quite well, the scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, there's loads of potential for them to chuck more on, for you to make your own up, add new characters, things like that, because there's rules for being able to use the Dreadnought, I think, from Betrayal at Calth. There was something in White Dwarf for that.
There was, yeah.
Haven't looked
Definitely
at that
was, yeah.
in detail yet. But yeah, that's cool. And it's all done. It's all fairly simple. It's all very easy to get into and read. And I really like that. So playing the game, should we talk about that?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. So we have a different system for Betrayal at Calth. Betrayal at Calth was, I'll say different. There are similarities in that you're limited on how many people can be in certain areas. They move together as squads and interact in that aspect. But in general, the game plays differently beyond that. We have 4 phases. We have the enumeration phase, which is basically the psychic power phase.
Yep.
The movement phase, the attack phase, and the consolidation phase. And each of these steps, the one thing they do with this game is keep things pretty simple. You might need to read the rules just to get a clear understanding of what they are, just because they're different from playing normal games. And it is very easy to overlook something that's so simple as well.
We did that a few times ourselves, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the enumeration phase. So every scenario will set up what psychic powers you have, and there are a number of psychic powers. And in most of these scenarios, it says that this sorcerer is from the Corvidae cult or the Raptorus cult, and they'll tell you to pick out so many specific cards and then some random. I think the last one is completely random. But that forms your kind of the choices you have for your psychic powers. And you can choose to cast 3 of them every enumeration phase. To do so, you pick one, say, bombardment. One was psychic bombardment, I think it was, which is a kind of direct damage spell. You're going to hit this one area a lot. And there's no kind of skill to this beyond picking which one you want to do, and a couple of choices in the actual phase. But you literally just turn over the top card of your warp energy deck, and it will have a number between 1 and 3 on it, and sometimes some text. And then the Space Wolf player will pull over willpower cards, and they'll have a number between 0 and 3, should I say, on both of them. And whoever, if the Space Wolf score equal to or higher, the psychic power doesn't work. And that's the simplicity of it. But some of these cards will have, if it's a Terminator casting the spell, then you'll get 2 warp points. Or if it's cast at a custodian, then the Imperial player gets 2 or 3 to dispel it. Or you can choose how strong it is.
1 or 3, dependent on what you want to choose. And if you choose a 3, you'll get no more casting this turn, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's some cards for the Thousand Suns which have risks associated to them. So it's either more powerful and you can lose people, or it's less powerful but you can gain further benefits down the line. For the Imperials, it tends to be what you're aiming at, or taking that risk that you can... The risk that this power will go off but you'll shut down the rest of the phase, that kind of thing. Really simple, gives you a few choices, but is not complicated at all. And not a huge amount of skill involved. No.
There's a little bit of tactical skill, isn't there, trying to think which order you're going to play your cards in.
That's
maybe.
Probably the biggest thing, is which psychic powers do I need to get off. There are 2 or 3 ways that the phase can end prematurely. Basically, there are 2 or 3 cards which can force it to end. So, yeah, picking the order of your psychic powers becomes quite important at times. But there's nothing you can do about it once it's started. It's all in the hands of those cards, isn't it?
Yeah, and we found that a few times, wasn't it? A case of, I should have played that one first, or, etc. But that, you get used to that very quickly as you go through as well, I found.
Yeah,
so at the start, I found the enumeration phase pretty useless with the cards I had, and when I was trying to play you, it was difficult. But when we got to sort of the third scenario, they were absolutely essential in winning the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you get a good turn of them, they can swing a game. They can really help maneuver. There's things in there which can block movement, let's say, or can teleport you across the table. So there are options depending on what you've got. And because of the way the scenarios are built, they're giving you those 3, which are generally going to be useful. Because the other 2 are random, their use is a bit up in the air. But again, there are ways to swap them out if you want to reduce how powerful your psychic phase is that turn. So it's simple. And it is very luck based, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can potentially influence that later on in these scenarios, as you say, are set but as a Thousand Suns player, by using Araman or your Terminators to cast them, and to avoid casting at Sisters of Silence and Custodians. That can, you can do that, but sometimes you just need to blast the Sisters of Silence. And the only one who can do it is a lonely dude, and then you're just, hoping the cards come up, aren't you?
Yeah, completely.
Brilliant. There's the movement phase. Nice and simple. Roll a dice to see who's got the initiative. And then the player that rolls can actually choose, but they move their models. And you can move, every area's got a limit of how many models, so 4 power armoured marines. So you've got 4 points effectively. Power armoured marines are 1, Terminators are 2, Custodians are 2. Fairly simple. And
as you would expect, really, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and no diagonal movement. And you can move 2 squares. And it's as simple as that. If you're locked next to an enemy unit, then you can only move if you go first. So
yes, it was quite good for trapping some people, wasn't it? Or stopping people from getting away.
Yeah. Sometimes that initiative roll becomes really huge because you're like, I just need to move 1 square just to be able to do this. Oh, I didn't get a choice. He's trapped me in. That kind of thing. So, yeah, it's cool. It can mean that you're really choosing if you want to go first or second, because you might want to see what the enemy's going to do, but that might actually mean that you haven't got the same options as if you pin someone in place. You might gain something on one part of the board to lose it on another part of the board. But it's nice and simple. You can move through your own zones just as long as you don't go over the limits and things like that. Allows you to set your squads up as you want, but it's very, very simple. Once you've moved all your troops, they move all their troops. It's a movement phase. It really is. It's extremely simple.
About as simple as it can get, I think.
Yeah. And the attack phase. So once you've moved, you get to shoot and melee. So if you're in base contact, you can only melee attack. So base contact. If your squares are touching, you can only melee. If you're further away, you can shoot, and there's no range on those. Well, except there are some weapons. So Melter guns have a short range, things like that.
And that's 2 tiles, wasn't it, or something?
2
like
or
that.
3, I think.
3 tiles.
But essentially, this is done so the person with initiative chooses 1 unit. And when we say unit, that's 1 square, all the people in it. And they shoot at another square they can see. And line of sight's pretty simple. It's just drawing a line between 2 zones. And if it passes through any part of an intervening zone, so enemy models or obstructions, then it's blocked.
Yes.
So, again, quite simple. They do provide, one thing I did think was some of the diagrams for things like this weren't necessarily as clear as they could be.
Well, like, you mean better examples? So that it
Yeah,
really
there's one page with examples of line of sight, and it doesn't really convey it particularly brilliantly, I don't find.
Yeah, because you really want those examples to be the most awkward example, so that it really gives you a good idea of how the rule works.
Yeah, you have to look and then read the little box to get a clear understanding of what's going on. And even then, sometimes you're like, does traversing diagonal to diagonal, if I put a line across that little bit, is that qualify? If there's something in one of those sides, there's a couple of small questions that you can ask, and I think you just have to come up with a way that you both want to play it. But once you've worked out whether you can attack or not, you roll dice. Now the combat system is completely different from Betrayal at Calth. It is ultra simple. If you played Risk, you can do this combat system. Simple as that. If you're, say we'll go through an example one. Say we've got 3 guys in a zone. We've got a bolt gun, a melter gun, and a heavy bolter. They've each got a different profile, so they've got different special rules, and they've got different dice, and this is where the multiple dice come in. So bolt gun uses a D6, melter gun or plasma gun uses a D8, whatever I said it was, and a heavy bolter uses a D10. And that, you take those dice, one for each of the weapons, and they become your pool of dice. And you roll them. Simple as that. And then you best thing to do when you're starting off is to line them up highest to lowest. Now the enemy will roll 3 dice because you've shot them 3 times. And they will all be D6 because that's the armor roll. However, if you have a higher armor in that, so Terminators get a D8, I think. You can get D10s and D12s, I believe. But combat shields, things like that can improve it. You're allowed to, for every Terminator, you're allowed to improve one of your dice up to a D10. So if everyone in the zone you're shooting at is in power armor, they would all be D6s. If one of them's got better armor that's a D10, then one dice goes up to a D10. So what you can do is, it's kind of hard to explain. Marines on Marines, if you're using D6s, we'll do it that way, shall we? Using D6s. 4 guys shoot, roll 4d6. 4 guys, 4 armor saves because there's 4 shots, roll d6s. Line the highest to the highest, second to the second, third to the third, fourth to the fourth. If the attacker is higher than the defender, you score 1 wound. So if I rolled a 6, 5, 2 and a 1, and Neil made the armor saves of 5, 4, 4, 3, the 6 beats the 4, the 5 beats the 4, so I've done 2 wounds. The 3 doesn't beat the next 4, whatever I said it was. And the other 2 don't beat those numbers. 2 of them failed, 2 of them wounded. Neil takes 2 wounds. The Space Marine's got 2 wounds, 1 Space Marine dies. Really simple. Maybe not the best way of explaining it onto radio, but you know what I mean? So you line your highest up with their highest.
And it's just getting used to that lining the high. I mean, like you said, if you played Risk, you're well versed in sort of this sort of lineup. But yeah, it doesn't take long to get to grips with it. No, absolutely not. And so obviously, when go back to our previous example, if instead of 4 bolt guns you have 3 bolt guns and a heavy bolter which uses a D10,
you've got more chance of rolling higher than that D6 is going to roll. Now, if your 4 bolt guns are firing and they've got 3 guys in power armor and 1 guy's got a D10 worth of armor, the chances are that D10 is going to roll higher than their highest roll. So you can see where the advantage is for the better armor, the better weapons. The other thing is, if your wound roll is a 6, it actually does, or 6 or higher, it actually does 2 wounds. So that instant kills a normal power armored Space Marine. So when you're using D8s, D10s, D12s, you've got more chance of rolling 6s and higher as well. So not only have they got more chance of their wound getting through, you've got more chance of them doing more damage. So they can start to tell.
It was also that having to knock off 2 stamina or 2 wounds, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Because obviously when they regenerate, then you would case it. Sometimes you thought, well, it's not worth attacking.
Absolutely.
Because I could only do 1 wound or etc.
Yeah, because at the end of a combat phase, at the end of the turn, all the wounds regenerate. So when you come to things like custodians who've got good armor and 3 stamina, or the characters, who are the same, who've got high armor, high stamina, you really have to pound on them to make it count. The interesting thing is, and where we were playing it wrong, we were upgrading almost all the defense dice, weren't we?
Yes, yeah.
So, say you had 4 bolt guns firing at 1 custodian. You would fire your 4 bolt guns 4d6. And the custodian would have 4 armor saves to make, so 4d6. However, he's wearing better armor, so he gets to upgrade one of them to, say, a d10. But it's only 1 dice. So, although that dice has a much higher percentage chance of blocking the highest dice, you're still rolling 3d6 against 3d6. So it shows that weight of fire can still really hurt. But again,
it was about numbering up those hits, wasn't it? That we realised that actually made a big difference.
Yeah, and again, because your D12 or whatever might be blocking their 6 or higher, those other hits that get through might only be 1 wound as opposed to 2. But still, you've got to be careful. If you can line up a unit to combat, to striking close combat and then another one to shoot, you could quite easily build up enough pressure against that single custodian to take him down. If that's what you do find is when you've got 2 bolt guns and you're firing at custodian, you suddenly think, is it worth it? Shall I choose something else? Because the chances of me getting enough wounds through to count are much more limited.
Yes, I mean, I think that's one thing that Custodes really did well, was because they got a 3 stamina. So many times you thought, well, there's no point in me shooting that gun at them because I could maximum do 2 wounds, and as soon as I've shot that gun, he's going to regenerate.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what it does mean for the Thousand Suns particularly is when you're doing your psychic powers at the start, you don't regenerate all those wounds till the end. So if you do start, if one of your psychic powers gets through, it might not be on specifically the guy you wanted it on, but it might be enough to open up attacking somewhere else, and then you have to make the decision between, okay, the guy I really want dead's that guy, but how likely is it when this guy's already wounded? So that kind of thing does come in. And I say, because of the way you make your squads in the game, it will say you have 10 Marines. You then get to choose, kind of, one of them can have a heavy weapon, one can have a specialist weapon. So the placement of your melter guns, your plasma guns, your power fists, all that then really starts to become important, because, say, a custodian against a couple of bolt gun armored guys is going to laugh at them most of the time. But if you can have a heavy bolter and a melter gun and a bolt gun and 2 bolt guns in a squad where he's only upgrading one of his dice to a D12, D10, and you're upgrading one to a D10 and one to a D8, you're putting more and more pressure on every time. And it's really simple. It's not the cleanest to explain without having dice there. It's really easy just to kind of run through it. Really easy. And then the other thing we did say that they have got special rules on the weapons. So if a bolt gun's firing, you get to re-roll 1s, I think it is, to wound. I say melter guns are short range, plasma guns get to do stuff. Yes. all bolt weapons, so the heavy bolter has that rule, support fire rule as well. And then also the units have special rules as well. So there is layers of complexity in it which build up on top of a very, very simple system, which I like.
Yeah, I found it very easy to pick up. I mean, admittedly, we played it wrong for the first 2 scenarios, was it?
Yeah,
I think
just being a bit sloppy.
But then again, it is simple enough that it's, we weren't playing it massively wrong. We got the general idea of it pretty quick, and it was just a few little nuances that we picked up as we went through.
It made a very big difference, though.
Oh yeah, they would make a big difference, but my point would be that it wouldn't be like stop you from in the enjoyment of the game. You know what I mean? It did sort of flow quite well, and I think, like you said, you'll probably play a scenario, maybe a couple of scenarios twice, just to get the feel for it, and then you could very quickly then get to grips with it and rattle through all 6 scenarios without too much time. Yeah,
you can. It was quite clear that we were doing something wrong as well, right? Because we were playing it, it was like, there's no way you can win this scenario, Neil. Something's wrong in what we're doing.
Yeah, it was the custodian one where it became really, really obvious.
We thought we're playing the scenario wrong, where actually we were playing the base rules wrong. But yeah, you've got something, because it is simple, it is easy to find where you have gone wrong. The first scenario just uses generally the same kind of guys, so it's not as obvious what the issue is. Once you just using custodians, it becomes a different thing. And yeah, as I say, as soon as you pass someone's stamina, that comes off. You, as a defending player, you choose where the wounds go, so you can have buffed up armor guys kind of protected by the wounds of littler guys. Behind that is possible. Of course, by having guys in one square, you've got much more potential firepower. Again, where we say, because your defense dice, if there's one Terminator in the square, you're only upgrading 1 dice. If you're only shooting once at them, you're always upgrading that 1 die. But if you're shooting 4 times at the same time, he's only doing a quarter of his dice are being upgraded. So, as we said, weight of fire does count, but then you are much more of a target for someone hitting you with the big weapons, rolling a couple of 6s and suddenly wiping out 3 or 4 guys.
I mean, that was the other thing that came quite obvious with when you are always looking for those extra big dice, but so many times you roll like a lower 4. Than a 6.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, what? You roll your D10, you're like, why did I get a 3?
Yeah, and it is weird picking up those dice, because, I do role-playing games and stuff, so I'm used to, D&D, I'm used to having the 7 different dice in that, but it's been a while for 40k and things like that. And just how often you do think, well, okay, right, I'm picking up a D12, well, 50% of the time it's going to be a 6 or lower, at the end of the day, but it's funny how your mind works. But over time it will count, and that's what you're hoping for over time. I say, getting your squads right, getting the kind of mix of where people are. You can, at one point, I think you were tanking wounds on Araman. You were like, I was just not quite doing enough to threaten the unit, and because of Araman's armor and stuff, you were quite happy to kind of absorb some with Araman, and then heal at the end. They keep coming at me, and as a result, Araman's this big thing coming at me. It's crazy.
Yeah, Araman was a real changer for me.
Yeah,
it was quite funny. That, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into the real sort of nitty gritty of what we did, but that scenario for us really sort of swung one way, then completely the other way, didn't it? Really, at the start, I lost nearly all my Terminators in like the first turn.
Yeah. Yeah, I went ultra aggressive and got away with it at the start, and then Araman just coming around the board. He gets bonuses on the initiative. You're rolling 2 dice, picking the highest. He's better at casting powers, and if you're getting good enumeration phases, you're really putting pressure on the Space Force player the whole time. In the same instance, though, if Gygor gets into combat and there's a kind of chain of combats going on, he can because if you beat someone up in close combat, you can move into their square afterwards. He gets to attack again as soon as he's done that. So he can slaughter one person, go through into the next lot, and then rip them to shreds, because again, he's rolling like a d12 for his armor, for his attacks. So, very different characters in that respect. And the one thing is, you do get a nice mix. The Thousand Suns don't get quite the same, because on the Spacewall side, you've got the Custodians, who are very different from the Sisters, who are different from the Power Armored Warriors. And even within that, there's 3 ways of arming the Custodians, 3 ways of arming the Sisters. So you can have, and it's your choice when you build the squad, when you build your troops. As I said before, you're told to take a Custodian, but it's your choice whether he's armed with a shield, a Custodian spear, or a sword and a dagger.
Well, the one thing I did like about how they organised the rules was that you could quite easily buy the box, build the Marines for your own use, and then they still were very versatile within the game. Because some of the, it didn't really matter too much between some of the weapons. So, if you've got 2 lightning claws, you could have D8 dual wield, but if you had power sword, power fist, or chain fist, it was just a D8. So if you were building them for use within within your legion, you weren't too worried about, actually, I don't want to put a chain fist on this dude because it doesn't fit my legion or whatever. Then it was still quite easy to use models how you wanted to use them.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is as well, particularly, I've made all my Sisters in the way I think they're going to be the most useful in the game. So I went, right, bolt guns. And I could be completely wrong. That's me just having a bit of a gamble. But there's no reason why you couldn't blue tack the swords to the ones you want to use with swords. And the flamers in the game are useful for big grouped up targets and things like that. And I can see them being actually quite useful on the tabletop as well. But I plan on getting more, so it's not a problem. So you're looking at, and the beauty of it is they've balanced the weapons enough that it doesn't really matter in game what you're choosing, because they just perform different roles. So you can choose how you want to play the game and run from there as well. So there's no points needed. And it's like, I'll take a melter gun, I'll take a plasma gun, I'll take a whatever, and run through it. So you end up with, Custodians who can't shoot, but, are much, or can't, who've got the spears, so their armour's less, but their attacks are different. Because they've got the guns on the spears and the swords, so they can both shoot anyway. But, the shields are flipping immense when you're rolling D12s for an armour save. It's absolutely brilliant. But
that when we were playing that you got D12s for every dice, that was a bit too immense, wasn't it?
Cheating for the win.
Yeah.
But and that's the turn. As say, the last of the last phase is just basically resetting everything, reshuffling your psychic deck, your warp cards, and taking the wounds off and the statuses and going again. I actually found it really quite fun. I want to finish off the other 3 scenarios. I want to get my Space Wolves out that I've painted and use them, and probably won't be able to be Thousand Suns because I don't know anyone playing them locally, but to get someone else up to, put some painted models down. Because at the moment...
I totally agree, actually. I found it really relaxing, a really fun game to get stuck into. And if I was going to a game club for a good 2 or 3 hours, I'd really love to sort of sit down and just go through all the scenarios.
Yeah.
And really get them all done.
I mean, it is one thing as well you could do, say your game finishes a little bit early, you could play one of the scenarios, because they don't take that long. Once you know what you're doing, you set the board up, and turns can go through very quickly. It's a case of moving a few figures, rolling small handfuls of dice at any one time, and you're suddenly on to the next turn. In fact, in many ways, once you know what the enumeration deck, once you know how the warp cards work, the second time I was playing it, I didn't really have to look at the text. I knew what that card meant.
Yeah, because you get used to what the text actually says and how it works.
Yeah,
it's that. Okay, yeah,
I found that was kind of the slowest part of the game for us. Was like, it's this card again. What does this one do? Oh, if it's aimed at a Sisters of Silence, I get 3. Oh, yeah, I've got a Sisters of Silence still on the board. Yeah, also 3. Whereas by the time I was playing it with Dan, it was like 3. Just straight down.
Yeah.
Oh, very simple, very simple. Interesting to see a lot of people were disappointed that it didn't add to Calth. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
How can you, when you say add to Calth, how do you add to Calth?
Didn't use the same system. So, I think a lot of people, and I thought it would, to start off with really, would be an expansion to the Betrayal at Calth box set. So it would use the same game system and would expand that board game.
Yeah, I don't know actually. I think I'm quite glad they did it the way they did it, and I think it's probably good for them to try new ways, because it's a great way of trying out some new game mechanics and seeing something a little bit different. I think I would have thought more people would have been annoyed if it was exactly the same.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just from knowing how the community sort of reacts to these sort of things.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh my god, they just recycled the same game.
Yeah. I understand kind of why people would want it to fit into Calth. I would suspect a lot of those people haven't really played Betrayal at Calth a lot. But the way the psychic system, it would have to be kind of just forced into Betrayal at Calth. And you could do it, but it would be like, here's a new section, of using psychic powers. The way they've done this allows them to start again, to really make the Thousand Suns feel like they are completely in control psychically. It allows for just a lot of different kind of fun. I think they wanted to clean it up. I think they wanted it to be quicker and simpler, and it is simpler than Calth, without a doubt. And Calth wasn't particularly difficult per se, but this is very streamlined. There are echoes, because as I say, it's not, you look at it, it's not that different to look at. If you were to put those models on a hexagonal board, someone who doesn't know either game wouldn't have a huge amount of knowledge of what's going on. But what you've got is a very, very simple, quick system of doing attacks and wounds, which I like a lot. And I
loved it.
The other thing is, it's its own separate board game then. Because people might think, I haven't got Betrayal at Calth. You do have an issue sometimes with that in the board game industry.
If it feels like an expansion, then some people may not want it for that reason.
Yeah, and there'll be people who didn't like the way Betrayal at Calth works as well. I think whenever you're going to see a board game like this come out, they're going to try something different. And, I mean, who knows? It might have other things beyond it as well. But it's fresh. It's its own identity then. Which is quite cool. I understand that it kind of would have been nice to have, for some people, to have the board pieces similar, to be able to link them together, to be able to create their own mini-game thing. They could do almost as own Mortalis type thing.
Bigger and scarier version.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's a small thing, to be honest. And at the end of the day, they're two very different places. You take Tiska City and compare it to the arcologies of Calth, and they'll look really odd stuck together, because Tiska City's all bright and, hope and all this, and, underground dirt pits of a irradiated world. It's,
yeah.
It will look a bit strange. But yeah. I think it's quite cool. It's one that I will make sure I've got on me every now and then when we go at the club. I say, and just kind of make sure I've got the pieces ready and kind of smash out a game. Or if one week I'm just not feeling like playing Toy Soldiers, play a board game. Oh, we could play Calth, because it is a board game at the end of the day. The rule set is very much a board game.
Yeah.
But it allows you to play the Smashing of the Thousand Suns.
Indeed.
Which is going to be very, very topical very soon.
But I think that's the other good thing. It's almost like a good warm-up, a good lead-in, isn't it, to the book coming out.
Yeah.
Gets everyone in the mood.
Yeah, as I say, I don't know how many people are playing it, but I think if you've got kids, it's also a good way of allowing them to play with your toys.
Yes.
I dread to think of an age because I don't have kids myself, but There are some younger kids I know who really would be able to cope with that fine. They might not be very good at it, but they'd understand it. But
my son was playing with us.
Yeah, he was, when he rolling the dice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it wouldn't take much to kind of explain exactly what was going on. But yeah, and how old's your son?
4.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, you could see kids of 8 quite happily playing this game. As I say,
I think because I think with a lot of the time when people think about the hobby and look at what we do, they do think sometimes it's a lot more complicated than they possibly perceive. And I never really played much Cluedo before, and my wife played it loads as a child, and we got a copy out one Christmas. And they were all sitting there, and then they all started talking about the tactics and the way to win it. And I thought to myself, this is no more complicated than a lot of the stuff I do. Yet, someone wouldn't even entertain looking at, a box like this.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think I've seen people play Kiddie Hammer, where you really just reduce down the rules of playing Warhammer, and you're getting something like this anyway. Whereas with this, they've got it all there, and the different dice. It's all very, very. I mean, anyone can compare numbers. That's as hard as it gets, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, and let's face it. My son, he just loves rolling the dice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not talking about a little bit older than your son, maybe, but it means you can, when kids are, I want to play, you're not going to want to play 40k with them.
Yeah.
Whereas they can feel like they're playing 40k because they're playing with daddy's toys on a board game. And that's fine. That's what they want. But cool. I think anything else add to that?
I don't think so.
I think I wouldn't mind some feedback on this section, actually, to let us know if you felt it was worthwhile. Good. I feel like Betrayal at Calth got a bit overlooked as a game. So we really enjoyed playing this one. Would have preferred to have got it all out in time for the release, but that didn't happen. So, we found time to do it, which is cool. It's not a problem, but looking down the line, if we are going to do this again, maybe do it like that. But yeah, let us know what you think. Otherwise, we'll just keep doing them.
Yeah, we'll do a segment on this every week
till you tell us to stop. But I pleasantly surprised, and think it's a good alternative as an alternative way of playing Heresy. It's quite a fun one.
Yeah, I think especially if you think because some people are really, really like for me personally, I only play Heresy, and if I went to a club or I was with some friends, you don't always necessarily want to get your Legion out and have a big game. But this is a great way of just having a little sort of, a little taster of Heresy.
Definitely. And as we said many times before, it's usually the story that gets us playing the game, and this is, moulded into one of the biggest stories of the Heresy.
Yeah, completely.
Cool. Excellent. We'll leave that there, and we'll come back and we'll have Michael on to talk more books. And joining us once again is Michael. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Greg.
And how are you? How was your break?
Yeah, it's been good, thanks. Nice and relaxing, but good to get back to things.
Yeah, absolutely. Again. I've found that I haven't read anywhere near as much as I wanted to.
It's often the case, isn't it, with family and Christmas and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, the issues with Garrow not being available on Christmas morning. It's a small thing. I don't really have an issue with it. It was fixed by mid-afternoon. It's not really bad for Christmas Day, is it? So
no, it does sort of tie into the issues with the Advent calendar throughout the month. So hopefully this is the sort of thing that they're finally going to actually figure out and properly fix.
Yeah, I think this one may purely have been hitting the wrong date.
Almost certainly.
Typing the wrong number in, which, small thing. I don't, and they were on it. I thought we were going to have to wait till Boxing Day at least to get that sorted, but it was quite nice to start off on Garrow. But we'll cover that at a later point, I'm sure, once we've had time to go through it properly.
Yeah.
So we got halfway through the Advent, and
we did.
I think we should finish that off.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would have done the Painted Count by Guy Haley last time, but I hadn't got hold of that at that point. I have happily got hold of everything now. So the Painted Count was the next Horus Heresy short story. That was day 13. And that follows on quite specifically from the events of Pharos. So this is definitely one where, if you haven't read Pharos, you probably ought to before you read this.
Yeah.
If nothing else, because there's a particular plot device in the Painted Count that is directly from Pharos. So even if, potentially the character's arc, it's not too much of a problem if you know what happens. But ideally, it's worth having read Pharos. But I thought it was a really nice follow-on. So it's a quite a key character from Pharos, quite an interesting character as well. And it sort of, like a lot of these are doing, it sort of sets the Night Lords off on the next steps of their path.
All right.
Leading things into what's going to come next. So it's a bit of a sort of battle for the leadership of the Legion with Kurz and Sevatar missing, in inverted commas.
Sure.
The majority of the Legion don't know. For all they know, Kurz and Sevatar could be dead, they could be imprisoned, they've no idea. And Night Lords being Night Lords, they're not exactly just getting on like brothers, shall we say.
I mean, that's a storyline that's been going on quite some time now, isn't it, in the Heresy with the Night Lords. What are Sevatar and Kurz up to? Are they alive? Do they care? All that stuff. So, Night Lords fending for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very in keeping with Guy's depiction of the Night Lords in Pharos. I think he's done a really good job. So I don't really want to say too much because it would could sort of give things away. But another good Heresy story and another one, like in fact some we're going to see in a bit, definitely leading into what's coming at some point in the near future, I think.
Sure, yeah. Which, in fact, the next story, Valerius, kind of does the opposite. It gives us a hint of what's coming, but the people involved, it's more of a finishing up.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's quite interesting as well, because Marcus Valerius, so the Vice Caesarea of the Therian cohort, was introduced in a short story, I think, right early on. And he's essentially the Imperial Army commander whose visions, sent by the Emperor, in his mind at least, led him and the remaining Raven Guards to head to Istvan and rescue Corax.
Against all orders, yep.
Yeah, against all orders and arguably against all odds.
Yes.
So that's really cool. I mean, he came in on a bit of a tangent. He's been involved in greater or lesser extents. And then, as with the Grey Raven, he was quite heavily involved in Wergeld, the novella in Corax, the novel, or the anthology, whatever you want to call that. And then something happens to him, shall we say, in Wergeld, and Valerius follows on from what happens next, tying us into another arc that I think is coming up in Runestorm that David Annandale's writing. The battles at Beta Garmin, or on and around Beta Garmin. So it's an audio drama, sort of following on what happens with Marcus Valerius and dealing with his faith in the Emperor and his sort of trust in himself. I think that's fair to say. Yeah,
there's, as you say, I think Beta Garmin's going to be covered over a few things. I think, what was the Imperiator Titan?
The binary succession.
The binary succession links into it. A few things will link into it. And this event will be portrayed. This, as you say, is the story of this captain who's a human, which is quite nice to see because the human side of the heresy war got pushed to the background quite a lot as we've gone through. We had the Remembrances to start with and a few others, but it's very much been about the Astartes. And this is very much about, these guys might only be human. Valerius might be sent on to do a job that is, a tall order, to say the least. But it's showing all the reasons why humans are still worth fighting for, they're courageous, they know the odds they're against, and they know who they're up against and everything else, and none of that matters. He's there to do his job.
Absolutely.
Really
and
cool.
With a big enough gun, even a human can be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's big guns in this story.
Yeah, some big guns and the ability to work as a team and all that jazz, and
yeah, definitely,
and to crack on and to show that humanity is dangerous. Because again, we're going to get to the fight on Terra at some point, and there's not just Space Marines on those walls. It's a big battle.
Yeah, absolutely.
All kinds of stuff involved.
I thought Valerius was really interesting as well because if you've listened to things like The Soul Severed or even some of the 40k audios, they've been quite overt usage of special effects and that sort of thing, and it works really great. Valerius to me was much more subtle, that it was sort of atmospherics. And the first time I listened to it, I thought, oh, yeah, that was cool. I like the story, but I'm not convinced about it being an audio. But then I listened to it again on headphones, and it's subtle, but actually it's really effective. And there's some bits with Valerius sort of making a speech. I thought it was quite cinematic, really, and I really liked the slightly different tack with the audio.
Yeah, now you kind of said that. Looking at it, everything with Space Marines is over the top. Everything. This is, looking back on it, you could imagine this happening in a film. And I think that's definitely the fact that you've got humans involved. So yeah, you've got the sound of engines and shots and what have you. But nothing's way over the top with it. It's all within that register, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that was really enjoyable. And Gav seems to have a knack for writing audio.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I forgot what his previous one was called. The Honor to the Dead.
Yeah, Honor to the Dead
was wonderful, and I think Aaron, in fact, says that's his favourite bit of the heresy writing. I think.
Yeah, he's certainly
audio, very complimentary about it.
Yeah, no, he is. I think it's one of those few bits he really wishes he wrote himself. Is the thing he said, which is weird. I actually listened to 13th Wolf recently because I was literally about to send an email to Black Library going, "Where's my copy of 13th Wolf? I should have had it." And then I found it. I'd put it somewhere safe, and I was like, I'm sure I had this. Which is very different, but it was Gav as well. It was very different, but when in this restricted time limit, he's very good.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. I do want to touch on one that is not heresy, but much like the Painted Count, it follows on from Pharos and deals with some of the people in that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so it's by L.J. Goulding, otherwise known as Laurie, and it definitely follows on from Pharos, from the heart of the Pharos, the audio drama, and also links into what he's been working on with the Size of the Emperor and what's going to be coming out next year with the Slaughter at Giant's Coffin.
That's the one, yeah.
So he and I had a chat in an interview, and he was talking about there being a question of why does nobody in 40k know what the Pharos is, even though the Scythes, their world has this mountain on it, this Mount Pharos. But why do they not know that the Pharos was a machine? And so that's what the story, the Aegean Oath, sets out to do, by way of a character from Pharos and the Heart of the Pharos, Obadiah, who is a scout at that point, and he's quite an important character to those stories, not because he's front and centre, but just the way he interacts with them provides a specific role.
Sure.
But by this point, we're talking pretty much 1,000 years later, and he's still kicking. And he's sort of the Ultramarines' last reminder of their dirty little secret.
Cool.
That by 31k, certainly by 40k, the Imperium Secundus, no one knows about it.
No.
And so he, still being going, sort of reminds them about that. So it's sort of dealing with how the Ultramarines are going to cope with this guy still being around, what he's been up to in the intervening 1,000 years, and what's going to happen. And a little bit about, why there was this machine, this vital thing that enabled Imperium Secundus. Imperium Secundus was no longer a thing, and pretty much at this point in the heresy where we're at, it is no longer a thing. It's coming to its end. And why does nobody know about that? And I think it's covered quite subtly. It's the sort of thing that Laurie seems to like doing, taking a little specific story and going, well, why? Why does this make sense? And I think he's done a really good job with it. But again, it's not spoilerific if you haven't read the others so much. But I don't want to talk too much because it's cool, and I don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, as a reminder for me, it's one of those things where it's that clear link between some Ultramarines on the Pharaoh, on Sotha, who, quite clearly become the size of the Emperor.
Yep.
And we saw it with the Nova Marine livery being used in the Legion.
Yep.
For the captain of whatever, chapter they were. But if you want to link in your non-standard colour schemes, it's these kind of stories which make it very easy to kind of do that. As you go
absolutely.
Back.
And I think if you're a fan of one of the successor chapters, not all of them are going to get founding stories. In fact, probably not that many are going to get stories actually of their founding. This isn't quite that, but it's just a really interesting moment of, like I say, one chapter turning into another chapter. And how did that really come about? And what you might think, given that there was the Aegida Company, you might think, okay, well that's a really clear, obvious logic for why they went from the Aegida Company of Ultramarines to the Scythes. Maybe it's not quite what you thought it was going to be.
No, absolutely. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to, it is tricky with heresy how close do you stay to what's going on, but it's a very good to remember that actually there were a lot of bloodlines. It wasn't just the second founding when people went, oh no, people got to change colours. People have got to act in different ways. Kind of sometimes these chapters are formed a certain way because of the way they acted in the heresy. The Black Templars, for instance, very very influenced by the acts of the heresy. So that's just good to remember that.
Also, remember what founding the Scythes of the Emperor were. I'll just say that.
Yes, indeed, which is something else. Cool. Right. Next one took me a little bit by surprise.
Agreed.
In that I was like, where did we leave these guys? Have we missed a bit of story? Is there something to come? And just had to get the old grey matter working a little bit. Exocytosis.
Yeah, so day 19, James Swallow, and it's Death Guard and the Dark Angels. I was exactly the same. Sort of read the synopsis, thought, started reading it, thinking, I don't really remember what came between here. Maybe you and I have both missed something. I don't think we have.
No, I don't, nothing comes to mind.
No. So perhaps we'll find out that there's a callback, there's a reference from Typhon's perspective of what's happened and why he's where he is. So maybe that will get explained somewhere. Who knows? I'm
fairly certain there is a story somewhere which just deals with exactly where we are with. We might as well say the names of who's involved because that's right at the start, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it's Callus Typhon, first captain of the Death Guard, and Luther of the Dark Angels.
Yeah, and
two characters who you might not necessarily associate together.
No, and trying to kind of think back to where did I last see Luther, and he's been on Caliban for so long that it's like, do I remember him leaving Caliban? Certainly not like real in-depth story as to what he's been up to of Caliban. So.
No, I agree. But I think that notwithstanding, it might frustrate some people. I think if you can go, okay, well, let's wait and see how these two characters, how Typhon and Luther got where they are. It's quite an interesting one because it's like a lot of these stories. I think they work by not being just throwing you into the action.
Yes.
A little bit slower, a little bit more thoughtful. And Typhon, maybe I've forgotten a little bit, but I don't feel like I've seen that much of him, and certainly not a lot of him sort of musing trying to get his head around what's going on, which I thought was really nice, because he's noticing changes with himself, physically and otherwise. And that's quite interesting, because you sort of think, okay, well, how's this guy, the Death Guard are all about nothing can stop them, and they're tough enough, strong enough to get through anything. How's he going to cope with some changes that he doesn't really understand where they're coming from? Bearing in mind as well that Typhon was a librarian, or was in the Librarius, until Mortarion put his foot down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So we know that he's a psyker of some sort, albeit probably a repressed one. And it's certainly safe to say that he doesn't quite go as far as trusting Luther and the Dark Angels. And neither do Luther and co. really trust, or really have much idea what's going on with the Death Guard. So that was quite an interesting idea. I felt if there was any criticism of it, you can probably guess at least a little bit of what's going to happen, given what we know is coming next with the Death Guard. If I had to be super critical, I'd say maybe it was a little bit quick. But that's been really picky.
Yeah, I get the feeling at some point there's going to be either a short story or within the novel itself it's going to cover the events that happened beforehand.
Yeah.
And then this will fill in that gap. And that's not a problem. That's like, when a character comes on film, I've had a girlfriend in the past who will ask, who are they? And I'm like, well, it's the first time I've seen them as well, because they just come on film. I trust in that story to be explained as we push forwards.
I think that's right.
But yeah, certainly we get a view now of Luther in the Heresy, which he's not really been in. And where do the Dark Angels stand? What exactly is going on? Get a few hints of that. There's a few hints on, as I say, whether Dark Ages really is a step towards what's happening to the Death Guard. Not the step I was thinking. But then, as you said, Typhon's actually been fairly separate from the rest of the Legion for a while now. And we know that in a few of the traitor legions that the first captain and the Primarch don't necessarily get on. We see that with the Soul Severed, which I finally listened to, where Eidolon, maybe people are thinking you're not really following the Primarch's plan. And you get a little bit of that with Typhon as well. It was very interesting and unexpected, actually, where they went with the story. Yeah,
I agree. For me, possibly the most interesting thing was Typhon was really quite sympathetic. The way he interacts with one of the Dark Angels in particular, he comes into conflict with one, and actually it's the other way round from what you might have expected. And I was sort of rooting for Typhon there. And actually, I've come away from this thinking, I want to know what's coming next, because I feel like this is going to be one of those great tragic arcs.
Yeah, potentially. We know there's a lot of story yet to be told.
Oh yeah.
That's without a doubt. And I say with the differences between Typhon particularly and Mortarion, how are we going to watch that happen, and particularly where they end up as well. So it's quite cool. Quite enjoyed that. We should probably save then the last one, the last son of Prospero,
and probably the best of the entire Advent calendar, saved to last, in my opinion at least.
I'll probably agree.
And I think this is gonna raise some eyebrows. This is gonna potentially upset some people, but I think it's upsetting people for the right reasons if it does. Yeah. So essentially, this is the last son of Prospero refers to Arvida of the Thousand Sons, who has been heavily involved with the White Scars. So for anyone who hasn't read Scars or The Path of Heaven, read them. Why haven't you read them? They're amazing. Go read them now. Just be prepared in The Path of Heaven. It's brutal.
The Path of Heaven shows why I think Chris Ray is actually the best writer they have at the moment.
It's hard to disagree with that.
Everyone's going to have their favourites, and for me, Chris Ray, I can't think of a step he's made wrong in anything he's written for Black Library.
No, I agree. A friend of mine is just more and more just saying exactly the same thing, just going, hang on a minute, oh my God, this means this, and it's just brilliant. I mean, if nothing else, what he did with the White Scars, characterising them so much. But this story is very much about Arvida. So the Thousand Sun came into that arc in an interesting way, and without giving anything away, he was a major cog in the works with Jagatai and co. By the end of the Path of Heaven, do you reckon we're okay to say what position he's in?
No.
It's pretty tricky to do that without spoiling.
No, I think we won't spoil that here. It's a discussion we can have later on.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He plays a very important role.
He played a very important role, and he's in a very specific situation. The Sigilite is involved. The Khan is involved.
Yeah.
And another Primarch is involved to a certain extent.
Yes.
And by the end of it, without giving anything away, there's, I think we're 99% certain that a major question that a lot of people have had, it's not really it's sort of a touching on the heresy question, more of a 40k question.
Yeah. Well, it is a heresy question.
It happens during the heresy.
Yeah.
I think it has repercussions running all the way through 40k. If you've read The Beheading by Guy Haley, if you've listened to Mortarian's Heart, there are hints in both of those that the last son of Prospero pretty much nails down going, yep, forget all your other theories, forget your theories about other chapters and their sources. This is pretty much the definitive answer. And it's a bit of a, whoa, hang on a minute.
Totally left field, yeah. It's one of those things where you might need to just go and look on a forum.
Yeah.
Just to cut. One of my problems with the heresy is my limited brain scope for names.
Yeah.
And when someone mentions a name, I'm like, which one was that? Because we've got 40 odd books. We know there's probably going to be at least 50 books, probably just over. There's a lot of characters who appear very shortly. There's a human in this one who, I'm trying to remember if it's the same guy who was in the Sigilite.
Yep, same guy.
It is the same guy. Good. So that was me thinking, I can't remember his name, but I'm 99% sure it's the same guy.
Yeah.
And he's brilliant in that. And the ending for me, I just needed to kind of go, I'll just check on, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it raises where it answers probably one question and shuts the door on a couple of theories. It then opens up whole new questions.
Certainly does.
And some of those questions are very relevant to the heresy and some are very relevant to 40k. But it was handled pretty well. It's quite a mind-bending kind of scene that he writes at various points.
I agree. And to me, stylistically, it harks back most to John French's Ahriman series. The way John handled that, I think there's quite a deliberate stylistic choice to do things in a fairly similar way. It also harks back to that thematically in one particular respect, and stuff that's very relevant from the Master of Mankind that will be coming up in another book, hopefully sometime this year, presumably.
Yes.
Without giving too much away to spoil any of the characters' involvement. Having to really tread lightly here.
Yeah.
I hope we're not spoiling this for anyone.
No. And certainly one thing I have seen on message boards and what have you, and forums, is people talking about the Sigilite and his knowledge of what's going to happen in the heresy as we know it as 40k players, and how much is he aware as a quite a powerful psyker? How much is the Emperor aware? With discussions from Master of Mankind, when you start linking those two together, it's all a bit conjectural at the moment because we don't really know. But there's lots of information that can be read in lots of ways.
Yep. Which
allows for crazy theories and intense discussions, which is always fun. But yeah, no. It's one I'm going to go back and have a look at again. Last time, Prospero.
I did that the next day. So I read it, thought, wow. Went back and read it and went, wow, okay, yeah. Yeah, really, wow, okay.
Excellent stuff. Yeah,
Much
brilliant.
recommended.
And then, as we say, the Garrow finished that off now. With everything that's happened, I'm literally halfway through the first story of Garrow, so I haven't got to any of the linking parts really yet.
Okay.
So I'm rereading. I'm reading the audio that I've listened to before, which is kind of cool and a little bit different and works really well, actually. I will say that it's been a long time since I listened to these stories, and even that was for After Eleanor, so that was only a year and a bit ago, probably 2 actually. But I'm reading it going, this works really well in prose.
That's cool.
Which is useful, because if you're going to read it, you want it to flow.
Absolutely.
But also picking up on different details, particularly reading it when you absorb different things from when they're said, is quite fun.
I think that's right, and you can take your time with it in a different way to an audio. So, when some of the audios have then become short stories, prose short stories, they've been worth going back. I haven't got hold of Garrow yet, so I'm really looking forward to that. But Garrow is such an interesting character that I think he deserves a coherent, consolidated story.
Yeah.
Vow of Faith, the novella, was wonderful and sort of set him off on the next steps of his arc.
Yeah.
It's quite cool.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I've seen the usual comments of, why are they collecting all the stuff together, blah, blah, blah. Let's just remind ourselves again. One, they've said they would. So everything that was ever in audio, they're going to put in print. They pretty much said that it's going to happen. Every story they've made is going to be available in the numbered series at some point. This is information that has been around for years now. Yep. So there should be no surprise. And if you want to collect but don't want to have to buy things twice, then the easiest thing to do is just collect the numbered series.
Just wait.
Yeah, it means you might be behind, but that's the choice you make. It is a choice. Some idiots like me will collect everything because we're collecting, and that's fine. Yeah.
Likewise.
That's the nature of collecting. Also, a number of people have asked for this. So some people don't like listening to audio, so they want them together. And as I said, they don't want the special editions, so they want them in the thing. What I really like is the idea to turn it into one coherent story.
Yeah, and that's something we've not seen before. But you couldn't really do it with any of the anthologies because they're, with the exception of something like Mark of Cowth, which is very different, they're not themed. So or certainly not themed to the same extent. So it wouldn't have worked. But Garrow, they're all the same guy. Yes. So it just lends itself to that. And I think James Swallow has obviously got an investment in this character, and he feels like there's still things to say. I'm totally up for that. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in.
Yeah, I think one thing that has helped that and meant that it wasn't that the shorts weren't put into other anthologies is that, as I said before, maybe last episode, we knew 3 years ago or so that Jim Swallow wanted to do this to his book.
Yep.
So I think even if that was a consideration, they've been pulled back. So no, at some point there will be the Garrow book, which has meant that has definitely happened, and hopefully will be really worth it. Because as we've heard that Garrow's story, they've laid it out to Terror and Beyond, I think was the terminology used.
It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So and he has a part to play on Terror, so that is pretty cool. Yeah.
I think this is really interesting because pretty much all of the Advent calendar, heresy and otherwise, but certainly the heresy, have been really clearly linking stories. And I think Garrow, to a certain extent, does the same thing. That's setting him up. Because by Vow of Faith, the novella, it's definitely setting him up for what he's going to do next. He's gone from captain of the Death Guard to Agent Primus or whatever the term is, and then he's moved to something else. So that's setting him up really nicely. But if you look at all the heresy, specifically the heresy Advent stories, from Perpetual, which is clearly a bridge between Unmarked and Mark of Cowth and what's coming next, into Exile, was tying in, for those who hadn't got it yet, to Master of Mankind. The Grey Raven and Valerius, following on to a greater or lesser extent, setting things up for what's to come. The Soul Severed did exactly the same thing. These are all stories which are going, cool, well, in the books we got this far, here's what's coming next. And I think they hint at what we're probably going to see in the next year to 2 years.
Yeah, I think the increase in the speed of which we're getting to Terra played a part in that.
Yeah.
A definite push for the final things to be organised. And I think what has helped in that is the Primarch series, which in itself won't necessarily cover these things, but which has in the adoption of having heresy branded stories that aren't part of the main Horus Heresy line, has allowed them to go, well, we can always come back.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's exactly what the Primarchs is doing. I think that's a really good point. There's been a lot of conversation around, well, half of you guys want us to take our time, but when we do that, the other half say, bored, let's get to Terra, and vice versa. So they've obviously had to make a call. You could have been cynical and said, they'll milk it for as long as possible. I wouldn't have objected to that, because I'm quite happy to be patient. Clearly the push is on to Terra, but like you said, the Primarchs allows them to go off and tell some side stories. And who knows, maybe once those presumably 18 books are out,
confirmed 18, yep.
There will be, other Horus Heresy branded stories.
I'm almost certain there will be.
I think that's a great move because it basically pleases both camps.
Yeah, and that's exactly why no one's left behind then, because the only issue maybe is for the collector again who wanted them all together. But frankly, how many of us are that bothered by that? In that we'll still collect the Horus Heresy books anyway.
Yeah, totally. And while the Primarchs books don't look like the Heresy ones, they're not in black and gold. Certainly it's been said that the limited editions, the beautiful 40 quid ones, are all going to be consistent. So they won't fit with the other 40 or 50 or whatever on the shelf, but they'll fit as 18 together. And presumably the standard the standard hardbacks will look like the Gulliman one does. That's cool. That for me appeases my collector's nerdism.
Yeah, and it's become, authors have talked about this. The Horus Heresy, when they started it, was a novel series. That novel series got turned into a game series, and now is reaching the point now where it's not a novel series, it's not a game series, it's a setting.
Absolutely.
And once it's a setting, the full procedure of having numbered editions starts to lose its importance as well. So it becomes something they can just spread out into. Down the line, something it allows, which is totally off the radar for the Horus Heresy numbered series, is you could have the Harlequins in the webway whilst Thousand Suns have disappeared through the warp. Master of Mankind is fighting in the webway. We've had a number of other times the webway's been shown. Like we see actually in the 13th Wolf, they're fighting in and around these constructs they don't understand. You could have an Eldar kind of viewpoint of a short story. These not quite novellas, not quite novels, whatever they call them, kind of about their view on these guys coming in and destroying their way of getting around and their safety bubble, things like that. That's something you can't do in the Heresy series.
No, that's right.
So it opens up huge amounts for all kinds of things, which, as long as we keep buying, they'll keep making them.
Absolutely. And as long as they keep making them, I am going to keep buying.
Yeah, while they keep the quality up.
Yeah.
Yes, why would you not?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really good. Awesome stuff. Well, I think that'll probably do for this episode, unless you've got anything you want to add on before we...
No, I think that Advent and Garrow is a really nice way of tying up the end of the year. There's some stuff we can talk about next time. We could talk about things like Sons of the Forge, which we have. I don't think you guys had covered before I came on.
No, there is. Yeah, absolutely. We haven't touched that really. This year has seen a huge amount of Heresy releases. We knew it would. We were being warned last year that be careful what you wish for, because 2015 was so slow. We became aware, we were told that part of that was Betrayal at Calth, and having those books tie in meant things just got delayed. People complaining then that we got too many this year. Well, it's making up for last year, so it's not a major issue. Next year, we know we're going to have Crimson King. We're having the Binary Succession. We're having I can't even remember what we've got coming out now. There's so many.
Pretty sure Ruinstorm and Old Earth are slated for some point next year.
Yeah, Ruinstorm and Old Earth. I think I saw Graham mention that Crimson King was booked in for around the summer.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which is cool. And yes, we know we're going to be getting 4 or 5 next year at least, I'm sure. Plus everything else that usually goes along with it. And really winding it up into towards Terror.
Yeah, plenty to look forward to, that's for sure.
Yeah, good times. And I'm sure we'll find out so much more at the Heresy Weekender. And of course, we've got a Black Library Weekender as well due next year.
Yes.
It's going to be amazing. So much stuff to be getting into. And I'm sure you're aware of Laurie's tweeting and putting up his pictures of his last ever meeting as part of
final meeting
Black Library. So for those who don't know, Laurie editor, Laurie Golding, Black Library editor, submissions. I can't remember what his final position was, but he
commissioning editor, I think, for the Horus Heresy.
That's the one, yeah. And basically, he's had his hand on the IP of the Heresy for a while now, making sure that the right marks of armour included, things like that. Had his last ever meeting as he moves off to foreign fields to pursue another career, and they had the old board game Horus Heresy by Fantasy Flight Games out as a kind of reference, with a load of the photocopies of the cards that are used in it, and then some of the really old fluff as well. So that seems to be that they're getting all the eggs lined up ready for the Battle for Terror, and I'm sure that if they have any questions, that Laurie will help answer anything he knows as well.
I think he definitely will. I mean, he's not the sort of guy who's just going to cut his ties, is he? But who knows? Maybe we'll see him at some of the events. Yeah,
hopefully we will. And even I can imagine him being furious if they got something wrong, and just as a fan. So yeah, I think they'll utilise him. It will be idiotic not to, I'm sure. And as you say, hopefully he'll be at some of the events and appearing online at various places. I've only really started going on the Bolter and Chainsword Black Library section recently. He frequents that as well as the first expedition, which is all good fun. I don't really post on Bolter and Chainsword much, but
no, it's enter with care, really, isn't it? A little bit,
as with any forum of a certain size. Yeah, it's quite funny people asking who this guy is. Though at least they weren't asking if it was male or female. So
not this time.
Not this time. They will again. Anyway, so yeah, we got a lot to look forward to in 2017, and we'll be covering loads of stuff, I'm sure. So all groovy. Yep. Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on again, Michael, and we'll speak to you again for the next episode.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. And there we go. That's the end of episode 58. A few little things to do before we close up the show, as usual. First off, we should announce, really, shouldn't we, the winner of the Master of Mankind signed poster draw in aid of Evelina Children's Hospital in London.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We raised £127 just from the draw, which is cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's very good. So thank you for everyone that purchased a ticket. As I say, all that money will go to them. I'm keeping a log of the amount of money. So at the end of the 6 months, we'll give a whole kind of what we've managed to give as a podcast via our fans and supporters. So we can just to keep track on it and see what's going on and show that it is happening and everything else. So Neil has a random number generator between 1 and 127, and I've literally just written all the people who purchase tickets like in their blocks, and he will select one, and it will go down, and we will find out who has won. First off, we'll do the big prize. So hit me with a random number, Neil.
Drum roll.
No.
The first number out the hat is number 41.
41. That is. Let me go down. Daniel Potts. So congratulations, Daniel. I think I've spoken to Daniel a few times. I will get hold of you on the email you purchased the ticket through pretty soon. If that doesn't work or you miss that or whatever, then get in contact with the show. And you have won that signed poster, which is pretty
Congratulations.
awesome. Absolutely. We also have a runner-up prize, which isn't quite as cool, and that is Master of the First / The Long Night, Gav Thorpe and Aaron Dembski-Bowden with the audio. And if you can give me another number between 1 and 127, and we will, if we get Dan's numbers again, we'll redraw that. So give me a number.
The random number generator has generated number 7.
Oh, that's nice and easy. Tim Hosker. So there we go. So thank you very much, you guys. Thank you all the people who gave us funds. I'm sure Evelina are thankful too. And you two will be getting emails. And awesome. Nice and easy. We will have more of these. I think next episode we'll start another one. Because I say at the open day I should be picking up even more kind of giveaway stuff. But I've got another handful of posters as well, so I will definitely work on that, and might also send out a couple of emails to people who said they're going to help. So that'll be cool, and I might even next time just give an update on where we are on money as well, overall money.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So hopefully you guys are up for all that, because it does a little bit, doesn't it? Every little helps.
Does. Every little helps.
Indeed. And as I said, so we are going, well, I am going to the open day. So if you see me there, be sure to say hi. Might be in the Forge World queue later on in the afternoon, purchasing my bits and pieces and picking up some of my limited edition models up there. The Blood Bowl is calling. Dangerous. Some people started talking about getting into the Hobbit at the club. So who knows? It's too much to paint. Too much to paint and not enough time. As you're finding out, aren't you, Neil?
It's always the same, yeah.
And of course,
way too much stuff.
We are barely a month, or just over a month away now from the best weekend in Horus Heresy up in Nottingham. So we will both be there, and we will both be kind of wandering around. So on the Friday, I suspect we'll be in and around Warhammer World or the venue as well. So I know the Friday at Warhammer World, predating the Heresy Weekender, is always chock full of people playing Heresy. So definitely going to show my face in there for at least the bit of the daytime, because it's really cool to see what people are up to. And Bugman's is always good.
Yes, good. It is.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Apart from that, we're going to keep it short and sweet. If you have any feedback, greg@theimperialtruth.com
or neil@theimperialtruth.com.
And when I say feedback, that's questions, that's topics, that's you're doing this wrong, you got all this information wrong, all that kind of stuff, as usual. You can also get us via the tweeters, so @ChildOfFang
and @NeilPaints
and @Imperial_Truth. And of course, Neil's all over the Instagram as well. So is it with Neil Paints as well? Is this month build up to an event like the Heresy Weekender? Do we get a load more kind of Instagram pictures of people, or do they quieten up a little bit before?
Well, there's certainly been a quieting down on Instagram over the last month, which is probably people working on stuff, don't want to show it off too much. Some people don't care, you know. Some people are very much sort of, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to show you every day a new shot. I have been very quiet on there over the last month, but that's mainly down to the fact that I haven't been at home. So taking photos is a real difficulty for me if I haven't got all my lights and light tent. So yeah, there's definitely a quieting down, but I'm going to try and put some more stuff up on there on the run up to the Weekender. It's just the time and effort. It's just the remembering to take the photos.
Yeah, you just reminded me. I was having some little debates about what to spend. I got my overtime money in just before Christmas. People owe me a bit of money that I'm due in as well. So, you know, some of that's gone on the Porphyrion. Just reminded me that I need to purchase my Folio 2 for taking photos. So that's the other thing I need to buy. I was on Element's website putting in my post-Christmas nobody bought me these presents list of stuff I need to buy. And I was like, oh, I'll buy this. No, I'm not going to play that board game. Okay, that saves me £80. That's £80 I can spend somewhere else. Yeah, it goes on more toys usually anyway. But yeah, the Folio 2's going down for that. But brilliant stuff. I think we shall move on, and so hopefully see you guys at events, and if not, until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.